Hello, everyone, and welcome back for more of Hope 2020. A big thank you to all the attendees, presenters, and volunteers who've made this virtual version of our conference such a success this year. We really couldn't do it without you. This is a community. So our next session is from John Huntington, a professor of entertainment technology at the New York City College of Technology. And John's talk is going to be about 20 years of scary technologies, CityTech's Gravesend Inn haunted hotel. Please remember that we have a hosted live QA session after John's talk, and you can submit your questions for that session in the Matrix chat window, which we'll be watching. So take it away, John.
Hi, I'm John Huntington. Thanks so much for watching my Hope 2020 talk. We're going to be talking here about the Gravesend Inn, a haunted hotel attraction we've done now at CityTech, which is part of CUNY, for over 2 decades, which is just hard to believe. I'm a professor of entertainment technology at CityTech. I'm also an author. I wrote this book, Show Networks and Control Systems, which you can buy on my website. And I actually did a presentation at the Hope Conference several years ago about the economics of self-publishing this thing, if you're interested. I've worked in just about every area of the entertainment technology industry: backstage, the theater, concerts, films, theme park attractions, Las Vegas, a little bit of everything. I'm a local one stagehand, and I'm also a photographer, and I chase storms. Here, what's most relevant is I'm the audio video technical director, meaning I oversee all the audio and video for the Gravesend Inn, and I have since 1999. And I also oversee the network, and I write the program that controls it all. We'll talk more about that as we go. So we're going to talk about what the Gravesend Inn is. We're going to look at a little walkthrough video. Going to talk through the technology of the attraction, and then we're going to do a little bit on the evolution of the systems, because it's kind of interesting, and then also some lessons learned along the way. So like I said, we've been doing this since 1999. It started as really kind of a small project, like, hey, let's toss some things together and plug it up for the students. Think that'll be fun. And now it's this just massive attraction that we get about 6,000 people a year come through, and it's the largest thing that we do, and it's just, we're basically working on it all the time. I'm talking here just about the technology. There's been many important faculty members and staff and students along the way over these couple decades that have contributed or done major parts of the attraction, which could be a whole separate presentation, but I'm talking here about the evolution of the technology, the control technology in particular. So let's start with a little walkthrough video by my friend Ed Dutchmaz. He live streamed this, and this actually includes his reactions along the way. But I think it's a good way to kind of get an overview of the attraction. It's a little dark as you go through, but we'll look at some other things afterwards. And this is a slightly edited version.
Hey.
Yes, my guests, come this way. Oh, welcome to the Gravesend Inn.
Yeah. Oh, no. Oh, boy.
Welcome.
Okay. Oh, shit. Okay. We're going this way. Okay.
I am from a long time ago, when my people lived here in peace, but the devil, Montonto, cast an evil curse upon this once sacred place. Now the moon rises. The only way out is to go forward. I will help and guide you, but be careful. They will try to steal your soul and trap you here forever. Go now. Save yourself.
Oh boy. Oh no.
How did I get in the front?
And he left first.
Yeah.
Okay. Here, I'll be the guinea pig. Whoa.
Answer the phone.
Do I have to answer the phone?
Don't stop for anything.
Oh, don't stop for anything. Okay.
She is not who you think she is.
My son. Oh no. Have you seen my son, please?
No,
Have you seen him?
I haven't found him. Oh, this is oh, wow. Whoa. It's like a whole dinner room.
One second longer, I shall commission a portrait of you and have you hang next to me here for eternity.
No. No. Okay, whoa, we're in an upside down room all of a sudden.
Well,
I think they need to clean the sink. Whoa! What the fuck? Literally.
Come, take a rest. Lie down in the bed.
Whoa! Moving.
Dead asleep in no time.
Whoa! Whoa! Did I knock on the window again? Quotes the raven nevermore. Oh no, you're real. You're real. That was like, oh my god.
My friends.
Wow, what the fuck?
Okay, so what's happening now is that Ed has exited the attraction and he's out in the theater, which we'll see a little bit more here. Let me just turn that down a little bit. So you can see here that something we don't advertise, but spoiler alert, the entire time you go through, we've been watching you on infrared video cameras, which is not totally surprising. But what is surprising is that everybody who's already been through is sitting in the audience watching you go through. We'll talk more about that later. Over here you can see there's an instant replay happening on that screen, and when we don't have an instant replay to put up, we actually put up the show control screen that shows how the attraction works. So I'll talk more about that later on. So here you can see the station here where the student team is running the surveillance system. So they're doing a few things here. One, they're watching the entire attraction just to make sure everybody's safe and there's no problems. But then they're also looking for things that people do that might be entertaining. And then if they do, we have an instant replay capability you can put up over here on the second screen. This is the show control system. I'll talk more about that later on, but you can see here's the user display. This is what the code looks like in the back end. And then off to the left here is the sound system. So over here you see the student that's the attractions manager that oversees the whole thing, again, watching for safety and all that. So she's watching the monitors up here. She's on headset with everybody. And then she also can shut down the whole attraction on this touch screen and do some other things as well on that system. Okay, so here's Popsicle Kitty. She always joins in on every video I do, whether I like it or not. So some general issues about the attraction. Let me just move her here. There we go. So we put this in and take it out every year. It's a pretty massive project. We typically start in, end of August putting it in. We do other shows during the year, concerts and, traditional theater productions, but we're entertainment technology department, so the haunted house fits right into what we do. I totaled it up. It's actually about 1.5 miles of audio, video, and control cables. That's quite a bit of work just getting that in and managing it. We'll talk more about that later on. And then the key part about the attraction is that people go through at their own pace. So Adults, you know, in the evening when it's a little slower, they tend to look a little more at the detail, and there's quite a bit of detail in there. Kids, you know, often will sort of clump up like a rugby scrum and kind of move through the whole thing. But then it's very flexible, but that means the control system has to be able to accommodate all that. Systems in the attraction. So here's the lighting system. You can see a little bit in the background, some of that video. It's a Grand MA2. This is used on big concerts and events and stuff like that. It's overkill for this project, but it's one of our major training focus consoles. So we use it here as part of that process. So if you're going to install this permanently, you wouldn't want something this expensive. Sound is run on QAB. I didn't actually get a picture with QAB on the screen, but it just looks like a list of cues. We run it now on 2 computers because it's just too much work for one of these old machines to handle. And then this is a backup set of computers so that if anything happens, and we've had them overheat and things like that over the years, we can swap it out. So it's not instant, but you know, within half an hour or so, we can get the thing up and running again. And then the audio is distributed over the network. In fact, everything's distributed over the network out to these racks that are positioned throughout the building. So you can see here, this is a Yamaha Dante box that takes Dante audio networking in and then puts out analog audio that goes in either to these amplifiers or into self-powered speakers. And these are just positioned strategically throughout the attraction. Video playback that you saw of the portrait in there, and then the ghostly lady walking by in the woods, those are now through these Brightside players. These are pretty amazing little devices that are like a couple $100, and they have a micro SD card to store the media, and then it's Ethernet control and also to load the content, and then there's HDMI out here. So we just get one for each monitor. So this is the guy in the portrait. These are the in the what we call the conservatory, the outside monitors for that when I was testing it a few years ago. And then the surveillance system is just off the shelf. Surveillance system these days, that's sort of evolved over the years we'll talk about. This is a PoE camera, so this actually connects to one of 4 network video recorders that are distributed around the building. And then of course we tile that together with the network to do the playback stuff that you see here. So this is a little easier to see. So these are the playback stations, and this is a third instance of that. So there's 3 computers here that just does the consolidated picture, and then we actually distribute this out as well. Over here is a little production switcher that we use to switch between the playback units and then also the show control screen. So you can see here, this is in our theater with the seats and so on over here. That's a piece of the set over there. There's one of the screens. And what happens is people go in under that stairwell, then they actually cross underneath the theater here, which is the dressing rooms, go down a back hallway, and then go out through this the attraction itself. Animatronic, this is our second animatronic character over the years. We've had this for 2 or 3 years now. I'll have more detail on her later, but this is a permanent installation in this room. When it's not in use for the haunted house, we use it as a lab to teach animatronic programming in. This is the rack we put in a couple years ago. These are the control units made by Weigel, of course, all connected on the network. This is an expansion unit. This is an interface box that we made to control it. And this is the old pirate who's still over there behind the rack here. You can't see in this photo. And then some amplifiers and stuff. The effects, we saw the lady popping up out of the bed and the boar head and some other things that didn't really show up in the video. Those are mostly pneumatic. So the air pressure comes from this system. And then these are the controllers. So inside here is an industrial programmable logic controller that basically just turns on a relay that then sends 24 volts to a valve. I'll show you in a second. These, of course, are on the network. I obscured the IP address here, and there's an enable disable on there. Here's one of the setups under the lady that pops up out of the bed. So here you can see the pneumatic cylinder with the air lines going into either side of the piston. This is the valve that controls it. This is a regulator for the air pressure and a valve that you can turn off if you need to work on it. Then this black cable that comes in here goes into that. That's where the 24 volts is supplied to turn this valve on. Last year, because the lines started getting bigger and bigger, we added these sort of deli number system into the system, or DMV, notification system. We have 2 of them. One is in the cafeteria area upstairs where when people come in, if the line is too long, they're given a number and then they wait up here and they wait for their number to come up. That's just tied in and run from the main show control system. And this is a touchscreen monitor that runs, that I was doing testing with, but that's what we use for the show. So here's the attractions manager station. So they have internet so they can write show reports and so on. They have a mic so they can page out in an emergency. So this actually bypasses the QAB playback system through an old mixer that we have. It does go through the network, but this way, even if the QAB system crashed, which it never happened to us, but they're able to page if there's an emergency or some other safety problem. And it's also good for operations, just like, hey, we're opening the house in 5 minutes kind of stuff. The attractions manager can control the whole system from here. They can start up and shut down the show. This is a touch screen there. And of course they have a phone, so people call in and they're lost or whatever, they can call in as well. House manager out in the lobby, same setup, but they have some cameras so they can see when the people go in and what's going on. We've had a lot of issues with people going in down this first stairwell and just stopping and kind of freaking out or whatever. So this way the manager in the lobby can see what's going on and send somebody in there to help them. And then they can actually start up and shut down the show in an emergency. And then right here is where they set that number. And here's the take a number tickets they give out, which you just get from off a big reel here. Sensors throughout the attraction. These are what we've evolved to over the years. Our laser sensors, they can shoot about 100 feet. So you can see it's just a little red dot there as the laser shooting across. These have been really great operationally because the student run crews and so on, it's very easy to explain how this works. It's like, is there a red dot on the reflector? Then it's good. So when the audience passes through and breaks the beam, then that sends up voltage back up here that goes to the interface box. I'll show you in a minute. And I'll just point out here that every single audio, video, and control cable in the attraction has a unified labeling scheme on a P-Touch label here because we run, like I said, 1.5 miles of cable, hundreds of cables to keep sorted out. So this is really, really important. It also makes it easier to construct them. In the attractions, most of them are hidden pretty well, but like this one is just out in the open and nobody ever sees it. Because it's so dark in there, but you can see it's on a mounting rail and that's shooting across the room to a reflector. Those all connect up to one of 3 of these input boxes that we made. You can see power supply and some wiring and so on. And then these are based around a Beckhoff unit. This takes Ethernet in here using old protocol called Modbus. And this is literally the same technology used by major theme parks and so on, because it's very, very flexible. Here we just have one type of input, but you can expand it, you can do all kinds of stuff, and they've just been absolutely reliable. Here's the units where we're testing them. We have 3 of them. You can see the connectors here. We use a different connector than anything else, so that it's very difficult to cross-plug it. So all of that ties together on a network. So we have 4 Ethernet switches in a big loop, managed loop, spread throughout the attraction, and then wherever the device is plugs into the closest switch to for convenience, and then it's all VLAN and routed and so on. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. So like any modern show control system, the way you build it is you just connect everything on an Ethernet network, and then everything has access to everything else. In this case, here's all the various device control, the lighting console, sound, the bright sign players, relay boxes. The bore head that you saw has a separate controller that interlocks the doors so it doesn't hit the doors. The animatronic unit, LED displays, the touch screens, and then all that ties together in one computer running a piece of software called Medialon Manager, which we'll talk about more in a minute here. Okay, so this is the, I'm going to pause this a minute, but you can hear this is what it sounds like when people are going through. But so this is the main show control screen. You can see sort of a little map of the attraction. And then each of the green dots represents the status of one of the sensors that you saw. And then all those go into one of those 3 input boxes. And then the effects here are run on one of the 3 output boxes. This is all status monitoring and stuff over here. This is the entrance timing. It's a very complicated process to try to get as many people through as possible. And then over here, We have the ability to enable and disable systems, and then we also have start show and stop show. So this is just running in a web browser, and the attractions manager or the house manager can then, through a touchscreen, can control the whole thing. This particular one's in the booth there, and you can see over here is the MediaOne software running in the background. They make a hardware version too, but we run it on just sort of standard PC in there. Let it run for a second. So you can see, so this thing's counting down and so on. So here's that whole setup again. There's that screen you're just looking at. There's what the code looks like in MediaOne. And a very, very important thing about this MediaOne Manager software is that it can be edited while it's running. That very difficult to do an attraction this size without that feature. So that makes it kind of expensive, but it's really the only way to do it. You would not. I mean, you could, if you had some compiled thing, you'd have to stop and change it, but it's really hard. As I mentioned before, the audience, can do really unpredictable things, and so you really need to be able to program it while it's running. So that's a key feature. Here's the QAB stations, and then there's that mixer I said that's there for the paging setup. So lessons, the audience I just mentioned will do kind of crazy stuff. My favorite story is the group that went all the way through the entire attraction, then looked at the monitors you saw, and then went all the way backwards throughout the attraction, leapt out the front door. So we're watching on video, running after them and all that. But so that means that the control system itself has to be very flexible and be able to accommodate that. We started out where like area 2 would preset area 3 and so on like that. But that didn't really work when people would go out the emergency exit or wait too long in one area or go backwards or whatever. But I think then that the ability of the audience to do whatever they want within reason inside the attraction, I think, is one of the things that makes our attraction, really good. And that's different from something like Disney's Haunted Mansion, which is amazing. But in that, people are in a car that they only can go one direction through the attraction. In fact, the cars are linked. I've been underneath them, are all linked together in a big loop. So when everything is moving or they're not, but they're not going to go backwards or anything like that can happen with us. So I view it these days, our attraction is kind of like a golf course where we have about 18 areas or something. And each group comes through and kind of plays at their own pace. Sometimes they'll merge, sometimes one will pass and play through and so on and go through it. And then it kind of just works itself out. When it's busy, people will hear the people coming up behind them and go, oh, we should keep moving. When it's slow, they can kind of take their time and look at all the detail, prop and set dressing and so on. I talked about that before. I could do an hour just on the entrance timing, which is a key thing in any place because you want it to go as fast as you can while still spacing people out through the attraction. So initially we would just let people in once every 2 minutes or whatever, but then a group would go in and stop on that stairwell for 3 minutes and the next group would run into them and all that kind of stuff. So we have a very kind of complicated adaptive system for that now. So let's talk a little bit about the history. As I said, it started out in 1999, a very small project. And then over the years, we just kept expanding it, redoing it, doing something a little different. And originally, because it was relatively small, we had the students actually did most of the design work, with some guidance from us and so on. But then as it got bigger and more complicated, the students just didn't have enough experience to be able to handle that. And then in 2001, after 9/11, a month or so afterwards, we're doing this attraction. We had started with the traditional somebody running around with a chainsaw and somebody pops out of a coffin and that type of thing was our original, what it was based on. But after 2001, we really kind of toned a lot of that down. And I think that really was, fortuitous for us in the life of the attraction because we really made it much more of a fun house. That really is more fun than scary now. And there's very little gore, no one touches you. And all those things I think really make it what it is now, which has been pretty big success. So 2007, we kind of consolidated everything. And then some of our excellent design faculty conceived the whole thing and then renamed it to the Gravesend Inn. And we're now in the process of trademarking that. We filed for that, so we can say TM here. And so since then, it's been more or less the same structure every year, but we're always changing a room, revamping something, updating something. And then in recent years, we've really been implementing the story into the queuing and voiceovers and stuff throughout the attraction that have really had a big impact on it. That's been really great. Sadly, this year, 2020, we're canceling due to COVID, but we really do hope to be back in 2021 better than ever. So the show control, and show control just means connecting two or more systems together in some way. I have a lot more about that in my book, of course. We started in 1999, and back then, we didn't have the computer horsepower we have today, so we ran it on a conductor unit, and then this unit had in the back of it some interface cards, so it had contact closure inputs and MIDI and DMX and serial and that kind of stuff. All of these are explained in my books, of course. Going in and out of it, we had some buttons here for mode and a little display. But the early shows were very simple. So here in 1999, we had like 5 cues. We have hundreds now. And then in 2002, we moved to MediaWand Manager, which just runs on a PC. But this one, as you can actually see, like there's a serial port cable, I think, dangling out here. That PC had some interface cards in it to get signals in and out of the computer, which of course these now is all on the network. But we've had a great relationship with MediaWand. They've been very supportive of us, and we've trained many, many students in their software. So we have a good partnership with them, and they're releasing a new version this year, so I hope to use it for 2021. This is the early user screen. Now you've seen the same basic idea, but it's evolved much more beyond that now. Originally, once we moved to MediaWand, we needed some input device. So here's some serial to contact closure devices that were connected up to the MediaWand machines over there. And then we just made a Cat5 snake here to run down to the sensors. This is when the attraction was a lot simpler. And then so that we only had 8 inputs on there that would read into the computer. I'm sorry, 16. There's 2 in each one of these jacks that would go into the system. Then we moved to this, which is an Advantech unit, and this is actually a hub, if I can read that right. That's how long ago this was. That's not the current IP address. This is an Advantech Ethernet to contact closure I/O unit that we packaged up and surrounded with power supply and so on. And these really worked great until about 2-3 years ago. After 15 years of service or so, we just started having some problems with them, so we moved to that Beckhoff system. Oh, and I should mention that all of the funding for this stuff comes from the box office. So as the thing has gotten more popular, we just take all that money and put it right back in. So that's how we bought those Beckhoff I/O units and stuff. And we've been, the last few years, I've been through a process where we've really streamlined the system and made it all heavy-duty industrial stuff because the audience that we get now is so kind of relentless that we don't have downtime anymore. So I'll talk more about that in a minute. Different types of sensors. Originally, we started with these alarm system motion detectors. Problem with them is they're just too slow for show purposes like this, because they are very reliable in terms of detection, but they are just too slow. So people would actually be leaving the area when it got activated and stuff. Then we used some retroreflective photoelectric sensors that were not laser. Those work great, but they're only good for about 3 feet. We also use some magnetic sensors and stuff. Also tried some of these infrared retroreflective sensors. Those work great, except they have some pickup pattern issues that are not really documented. And then if you mount these at knee height, which we had to do in a few places, turns out I discovered that my black jeans actually absorb the infrared light from the sensor and would not trigger. So for me, that's good. For audience members we're trying to track, that's not so good. So then we went on to the laser sensors a couple years ago. Again, these are about $100 a piece, but and we had to come up with a new cabling infrastructure and all that. But these have been great, just super reliable. Really the only thing that can go wrong, in fact, this one, the scenery crew sheared the back end off, so that happened. But mostly it just shoots the red dot across to the reflector. If it's on the reflector, it works. It can go about very long range. And now if somebody, people bump into things as they go through, if they happen to hit one of these sensors, knock it out of alignment, it's very easy to get it realigned. And we've actually been moving from these guys, which are adjustable, just to sort of metal plates that just don't move once they do it. Again, this stuff was not really designed to be put in and taken out every year. And it's been a constant process of upgrading that. Lighting the original system was a Hog 2. This was triggered from show control via MIDI show control. You can see old CRT monitors and stuff. And then in 2009, a long time ago now, we moved to the Grand MA2, and that we brought the control of that onto the network, and that's what we're still using. That's just been a very solid solution. And they still make that product. They have a version Grand MA3 now, but as we'll talk more about this in a minute. Sound, we originally started with a program called SFX, and we've also used over the years Digital Performer, Max, Audio Box, all kinds of things. In 2011, we started sending the audio from SFX out over the network to several devices, and then 2014 we moved to QAB, and now we have that completely network distributed system you saw over at Dante. Same basic idea though. I think this was getting MIDI back in the day, and of course now that's just getting OSC commands over the network from show control. Video started like, hey, let's stick this camera in there and a monitor so we can see inside. That's kind of how it started. And then it was one camera, and then it was 4, and then we had to come up with some control stuff around that to route it and so on, distribute it. And then students said, hey, how about instant replay? So I remember riding my bike down and buying a TiVo, which you can see here, and I never activated it, so we just used that as a constantly recording, record playback device. And then we built a whole infrastructure around it to switch the 4 cameras into the TiVo and then back out. Then we went to 8 cameras, and then we had a more complicated system to switch that, and then which you can see here. So this would do all that. And then in I can't remember what year, but 2000 something, we went to a power over Ethernet camera, because each of those cameras you saw before also had to get a microphone and power. And then up in this setup, which you can't see, there's also a mixer controlled by this Medialon instance here. So that would switch the microphones along with the cameras and so on. If we were permanently installing, we would have sort of left it, but now it was a really good move to this, but this was running on one old Windows server that was just really, really working too hard. And so then we upgraded that to the most recent system. Is these little, the product's called Alibi, and it's just a surveillance system for that, and those more modern cameras you saw in the other picture. And now what we have is we have 4 of these little rack mount network video recorders spaced around the attraction. Those connect to and power the cameras directly, which takes a little traffic off the network. And then in that video station you saw before, we pulled together all those feeds, and then that's how we do the instant replay and stuff. So that all comes back up over the main network. So what's interesting is that that idea, the video of watching the patrons go through, was just an evolution for us. I think I just said, let's throw the camera in, and then we just scaled from there over the years, and we had an instant replay. And my friend Todd Robbins, who's now our artistic director, pointed out to me, like, this idea is 100 years old. I'm like, what are you talking about, 100 years old? There's no video. So it turns out in Steeplechase in Coney Island, there was this thing called the Blowhole Theater, which is what this old film is from. And what that was is, as people exit the attraction, like ladies would have their skirts blown up, and people would torment them with various things. As you saw, there's like crazy floor moving. And then what's interesting, though, is that these are all people that came off the ride, and the people that are watching them, that you'll see here in a second, sorry, move this up a little bit, that are watching them have also been on the ride. So here you go. Here's a good shot of the whole group watching it. So we stumbled into this, but I really think it's one of the things that makes our attraction very unique. And going through the attraction takes a few minutes, like any most haunted attractions. But people will sit for an hour and watch other people go through, and it's very fascinating because it is voyeuristic, but it's voyeuristic for people who've already experienced the same thing. So when we started, I thought, when we especially started doing the instant replay, I thought people were going to be very upset about seeing themselves on screen, but of course I was wrong about that. Now people want the clip to put online. So in addition to the video surveillance playback system we had, as you saw in the walkthrough, there is a portrait that comes to life and speaks to you. Originally, that was a live performer. As you can see here, this is all analog camera, monitor, so that she could watch and so on. She's an earpiece. big rack of stuff and control to make that all work. And that was fantastic when we had the right person in place. So like the very first student who sat in for this thing was like a stand-up comic, and so she could bust on people and so on. But then over the years, you know, she graduated. We had other people in there were like, hey, you in the red shirt, and it just got less and less interesting. So then we pre-recorded all the clips, and we had a positioned student operator who could play back various clips, but that turns out that's kind of boring. So then eventually we just settled on one clip that you saw, and we built the show around it. So that's one of the things we had in the works for this year, but we're going to redo that clip, we hope, for next time. In the animatronic system, we started with a pirate. Again, this was a demo unit from a commercial animatronic company. He started out, this is kind of the way he came from the factory, and then we have this backdrop, and then it just evolved over the years with our excellent design staff, came up with this great props and so on, this whole environment here. And he's now retired. He's still in the system, but he doesn't really do much anymore. And the main character you saw there. So we started with the Gilderfuchs system, went through Wings Platinum, and now for the last 5, 6, 7 years, we've been on Weigel system, of course, all controlled by the network. The Gilderfuchs was not controlled by the network. That, again, there's not much reason. It does everything we need to do. And it works great, so there's no real impetus to change that at the moment. Oh, here's the new character we got. So I took this photo in the shop in Ohio on my way back from storm chasing a couple years ago. So this was in a sort of family entertainment center lodge thing, singing and had been brought back to the shop, and the had gotten kind of rusty and so on. So the company, Life Formations, really did cut us a great deal and refurbished the character, and this thing has been absolutely rock solid, which is just great. So when they are not able to license the costume and so on, so we came up with our own concept. She obviously looks much different now in the haunted house context than she did then. But this thing runs about every 90 seconds when we're in show mode. So it's a heavy duty unit, and it's just been working great. The network itself, 2004, we had 9 devices on the network, and now we have 59. And then in 2011, we moved to a routed, managed network. I have a lot of information about this on my blog that goes through all that stuff. And I think what's really fascinating, so now the entire system is based around this network, and it's been absolutely, just totally rock solid. I really can't recall any problems with it. And I think what's so fascinating is that this is a chart I made. Oh, let me take my picture up here. So this is a chart I made for a couple articles I wrote last spring while I was on sabbatical that are at this URL on my website, but just go to controlgeek.net, you can find it. My idea, the sort of theory that I developed in these articles is that our industry in the show technology, started out in the early days from like the Beatles at Shea Stadium through about the mid 80s. Things were improving. There was new stuff, but then in the mid 80s, we had this just explosion of technology. And then somewhere around my date is around 2010, the new technologies really started flattening out a little bit, primarily because of the impact of the network, as we've seen in this attraction directly. And this is really great, I think, for the industry, because now we can, the basics are solved. So power, rigging, and network data transmission are solved, and we can focus on the skills and the programming, the integration, and the story, and so on. So it's actually 2 articles explaining that idea are available on my website. And of course, also on my website is information about my book, Show Networks and Control Systems. It's available on Amazon in print and Kindle editions. You can also Google book search the whole thing here. And then also up here is video lectures related to the book chapters. Most of the chapters in the book here, there's a free video about an hour or so on each topic. These are some of the shorter ones you can see up here. And that actually gets into design principles. There's information on show control, and then 3 chapters there on networking. And also at the moment on the website are some networking lab demonstrations. So also on my website, I have a whole bunch of write-ups of various things about the Gravesend Inn, specifically about the network, about the sensors, the animatronic character, anything you're interested in there, it's all up on my website. And then here's the URL for the attraction itself, gravesendinn.org. Please come in 2021. We hope to be back, COVID allowing. bigger and better than ever. And one key thing is that you can see all the stuff that you saw here in the video and everything. You can see live while it's open. We specifically have designed all the technology in the attractions so that it's not locked in some machine room somewhere. It's available for you to come and see it while it's operating, which is really the best way to see it. So please come out and check that out in Brooklyn in 2021. So thank you very much.
Hey, thanks, John. What a cool project. So what inspired you to create the Gravesend experience in the first place? And does the experience change year over year?
Yeah, so we started this in like 1999. We basically just pulled some things off the shelf and plugged it together. And then over the years, it really evolved. And then as I can't remember the year, I mentioned it in the video, but in I don't know, 2007, something like that, we kind of stabilized the design. But now we still, every year we revamp a room, change things around. But honestly, it's such a massive project that just about all we can do is get it installed every year now. And typically, we'd be working on it right now and like kicking off the end of August and just splat out until Halloween to get it up and running.
So do you ever go backstage at any of the big theme park, attractions like Halloween Horror Nights or anything like that to get tips and tricks or ideas for what you're going to do with the Gravesend Inn?
Yeah, it's a pretty small industry, the people that do this show control kind of stuff. And in fact, a good friend of mine does the all the control systems in AV for the Hollywood Horror Nights in LA. And you saw in the video these bright sign players. I couldn't really figure out if they would work for my application. And I saw my friend Drew at the IAPA, which is the big theme park convention. I'm like, hey, you use bright sign, right? He's like, well, they work. Yes. And he said, here you go. And then I've also been, under the Haunted Mansion at Disney and all kinds of things like that, because people that do show control, which is a small field, but you kind of have to know a little bit about everything, which is always what sort of made it interesting to me. And so they get access to all kinds of crazy spaces.
So you're a professor at the school, and this is kind of your primary focus. It's one of your primary focuses in what you teach. How do you get do you get students who specifically take courses or majors just to work on this project?
Yeah, it's a big recruiting event for us now because we get about like 6,000 people a year. We now have families that have come every year for 10 or 15 years. And those kids have like enrolled in our program and done all that stuff. So yeah, we've had students that do that. And then the animatronic character you saw in there is that's in a class that I teach in the spring, typically, where the students get to program that character and so it's usually singing crazy rap songs and all kinds of things like that throughout the year. But the other thing that for us, we're an entertainment technology department. Theater is one thing that we do, but we put about 100 students to work on this project every year, and we need a project that size to give our students that experience. So that's what it's really evolved into.
Awesome. So one person had a question: is it named in homage to to Coney Island?
Yeah, so there's Coney Island in Brooklyn. There's themes from that, but yeah, Gravesend is a neighborhood in Brooklyn, and the backstory, which is developed by our production designer Norma Chardoff, did many hours of research on this, where there's the character names all come from real historical characters in Brooklyn. Gravesend, I don't know, I can't remember if there was an actual Gravesend Inn, but it was all based in that. And then the sort of tradition, of course, comes from Coney Island, and I shoot a lot of photos down there. I have a lot of friends in Coney Island, so there's a big influence in that whole area.
So we have a couple more technical questions coming in from the audience in the Matrix chat. So are you thinking about using computer vision to trigger timing of next sections of the experience?
Yeah, we've looked into some of that. Some of that kind of comes for free with our surveillance system. Honestly, just haven't had time, and where our students are, we have a lot of students that get really excited about doing shows, but a lot of them come in without a lot of experience before. So, we don't have a graduate program or anything like that to get into some of those more advanced areas. But, in the end now it's such a big thing with 6,000 people a year coming through that reliability is really critical. So what we do each year is we look at whatever new technologies we're going to put in. We typically evaluate them in the spring, troubleshoot them, and kind of try to break them in the summer, and then only if it survives all that, then we'll put it into the attraction. But we're always looking at stuff, and we have an emerging media program in our school which we partner with, and we hope to be able to give them sort of a platform like, okay, here, try it out in this room first, and then if that works and survives the onslaught of kids during the day or whatever, then we'll put it in.
So another technical question from the audience. Most control systems seem to be quite pricey, hardware solutions. Any low-cost recommendations for home tinker enthusiasts to start getting into cheap PC and Arduinos? Are they the best way? Are there any low-cost controllers out there that are available?
Yeah, that's a really good question. There's the haunt industry is now enormous. It's sort of like there's pretty insane and very sophisticated Christmas light displays and things like that you can buy, stuff from a little company or make it yourself and do pretty sophisticated stuff. Also in the haunt market now, there's this year, I'm not sure, but there's like haunted convention and all that, where there's lots of solutions that are very inexpensive. What we build here is really, and again, it's evolved. We never set out to do this. It just sort of evolved this way over the years. But this one's really sort of theme park grade stuff. Like you see our IO solutions and stuff are literally what Disney uses, what a lot of other companies use. But there are certainly like Arduino and things like that. You can do a lot with those. And there's even just little boxes you can buy with an integrated sensor, and sound will come out of it.
So another technical question for you. What is the mix between intelligent and conventional dimming?
Boy, I'd have to ask our lighting designer that. I don't know. We have both. We have some conventional fixtures. We have a bunch of moving lights and LEDs. But I don't know the numbers off the top of my head. How you control the lighting console, I can tell you, but.
All right. So are there any future steps for your setup on how you plan to innovate further that you would be willing to reveal at this point?
At this point, well, everything, of course, is sort of derailed this year because normally we do the new development in the spring and the summer. We weren't able to do any of that. Our immediate plans is more, a couple years ago, I really went through and spent a lot of time sort of cleaning up the systems and documenting things. It's not the most sort of glamorous or exciting things, but it's really critical because, in the old days, we'd do it. There'd be a few hours where no one would show up. And if something broke, we'd go fix it. Now it's just sort of this relentless 7-day thing where we don't get a break. So we spent a lot of time like just updating sort of back-end systems you don't really see and all that, and cleaning up. So we want to replace some of the older videos. Like one of them that's in there now, I think you're looking at like 200 by 400 pixels or something, because we shot it like on SD video, and then cropped it and then moved it. It's been through like 12 systems and we need to replace that. So that's the kind of stuff we're working on, but we do have some longer range plan. And I should say we brought in a new artistic director in the last couple of years, Todd Robbins, and we've been adding a lot of just little things that make a huge difference in terms of voiceovers and characters, things like that throughout the attraction. And that's what we've been working on now, but we have lots of plans off into the future.
Exciting. So are there any things that the students have done over the years that have surprised you or impressed you?
Oh, I would say every day, but our students are amazing, and they come from, I came from, small town, and I always wanted to work in this business, and I was doing shows when I was 12 and 13 and stuff like that. Our students, they just, most of them grow up in New York, or they grow up in another country or whatever. And what they overcome even to get into our, make it to our school is always inspiring every day. And then the ones that then sort of catch the bug the same way I did when I was a teenager, they go off and do very well in the industry. And that's really exciting how that works.
So someone a teenager, somebody in their preteens, what recommendations would you have for them? What should they play around with if they're interested in getting into the motion technology or entertainment technology industry?
Good question. The thing I love about, especially the live performance aspects of entertainment, is it really encompasses everything. So whatever you're passionate, the key is you got to be passionate. So whatever you're passionate about, pursue that, because I'm passionate about control systems and this kind of stuff, but we have painters, prop people, costumes, fabricators, mechanics, electricians, anything you want to do, video, audio, all these things, it's all there. The key part in our industry is it's again about passion, and also being able to, like, the show must go on ideas sort of ingrained in our personalities. So whatever we do, you have to be able to get a show up one way or another, and it's not sort of a like 9 to 5 kind of thing where you're like, oh, time to go home. It's like, no, we have 500 people, 50,000 people coming tomorrow. We got to get something going. So.
Well, we need to wrap it up. We're about out of time for today. But on behalf of the Hope 2020 attendees, presenters, and volunteers, thank you so much for sharing your project with us today. And I, for one, am really looking forward to when you open up again to go experience Gravesend Inn myself. So thank you, John. We appreciate it. As to the audience, come back at the top of the hour for our next talk, how to turn your hacking skills into a career. And until then, keep on hacking.